I've done a fair number of coffee grinder reviews, and naturally, viewers often ask me which one they should choose, to which I always reply, only you can answer that. I try to be thorough, going past just the features and user experience, and doing pretty complete teardowns because I think that mechanical design, component quality, and build quality are important factors to help you judge value for money. Then there's ease of use and maintenance. And of course, the big one, how does the coffee taste? So in this video, I'm not going to tell you which grinder you should get, but rather I'll try to make it easier for you to reach a decision by explaining how not to think about this, along with a few suggestions about how you might think sensibly about it. We're looking at ground coffee under a microscope today so that we can see up close and personal how various prosumer grinders do their magic. Oh my God.
It's like a miracle.
We're looking at 3 machines and 7 samples. While we're talking, I'd like you to notice and compare certain features: the variety of particle shapes, the surface textures, and the range of sizes. When it comes to coffee grinders, the internet is obsessed with particle size distribution as a dominant characteristic, but it's only one of several that influence flavor, and I don't know how it got to be so disproportionately weighted. It's not reliable as a single factor. As I demonstrated in a previous video, the link to which should be appearing now, the Mahlkönig EK43's production of fines is highly dependent on the sample density and hardness, producing dramatically more fines from denser, harder samples than it does from softer ones. The Niche Duo, in contrast, is very consistent in fines production independent of sample hardness and density. So let's not get too hung up on any single feature as the tabernacle of flavor. Try to take it all in. The basic idea here is that fractured, splintered, irregular coffee particles with a rough texture will present more surface area to the water than more spherical particles with smoother surfaces. Indeed, the 3D shape with the smallest ratio of surface area to volume is the sphere. So ideally, look for irregular shards of broken glass versus globular shapes. There are so many different grinders on the market now that shopping for one can be an ordeal. So here is the most common mistake that I want you to avoid. Do not chase a flavor profile through your choice of grinder. Of course, different grinders affect flavor in different subtle ways, but the 3 dominant factors are the coffee sample itself, the water quality, and the basic method: espresso versus pour-over, mocha pot versus Turkish. So, beans, water, and method, that's where you see major differences. It's tempting, but wrong, to think about a flavor profile you like and then choose a grinder based on that. It might be encouraged by those enthusiasts who report that a specific grinder or optional burr set suddenly unleashed a multi-dimensional flood of bruised red berry flavors that had hitherto remained inaccessible. The beginner reads that and thinks, aha, now I like those bright fruit flavors, so this looks like the gadget for me. They innocently expect that the flavors they're looking for will start to appear in whatever coffee they brew, and of course that's not how this works. Those flavors have got to be present in the coffee before any grinder can liberate them. And when they do, the differences among competent grinders are fairly subtle. In other words, the differences between a Eureka Specialita and a $20 blade grinder are immediately noticeable because only one of them is truly competent, whereas the difference between the Specialita and a Niche Zero, which involve very different burrs, are comparatively subtle. They both make really good coffee with somewhat different emphasis in taste. If you're chasing a particular flavor, either one of those grinders can deliver it with the right coffee sample, and the right water, and the right method. The more samples we look at up close, the more obvious it is that the similarities outnumber and outweigh the differences. In fact, I labeled each clip as I made them because I was concerned I might get them mixed up. Don't start by thinking this grinder or that one. Start by thinking competent grinder, because once you reach that point, the differences have moved to the background. So how would you approach this? The features I think you should consider first are whether the machine is designed more for fine grinding, for espresso and Turkish, or coarser grinding, more for drip, pour over, and French press. Burrs can be, and often are, designed with that distinction in mind. Second, consider whether single dosing or on-demand dosing suits you. Single dosers let you change coffee samples with impunity. On-demand dosers have a very convenient workflow. Look for ease of maintenance, cleaning especially. It can be a real project, or it can be a snap. I really like a variable speed motor, but with single-phase AC, that's impossible. Rotation speed is determined by the AC current frequency, 50 or 60 Hertz. If you were to use a power supply that lets you reduce voltage, you'd get exactly the same rotational speed because the frequency would be the same. So what would you get less of? Torque. You'd get less torque. What you need with single-phase AC is a variable frequency drive, or VFD, and a three-phase motor, but that's not happening at home. However, a brushless DC motor, a BLDC motor, is three-phase, and you can vary the speed. And it produces 2 to 3 times the torque of a comparable single-phase AC motor, so it can be small and light, giving you a powerful machine in a very compact form. So I really like the newer grinders with variable speed BLDC motors. They're not cheap, but that is a real improvement. Forget the coated burrs for $500. That's not a real improvement unless you plan on grinding 100 grams a day on them for the next 2 centuries. They're only rational in commercial use, where a grinder is going through kilos a day, not grams. I would personally stick with the major established brands that have consumer product line. These outfits all make competent machines that won't disappoint you. And you know who's behind them, so warranty issues are often a bit easier to cope with, and it's relatively easy to get spare parts and accessories, and often community support. Don't worry about getting locked into a bad experience. While the niche Zero would not be my first choice for a pour-over, I do use it that way sometimes, and I even have a trick for making it work better at coarse grinding, about which I did a short video whose link should be appearing. So why did I choose the 3 grinders I'm working with here? Because they represent 3 distinct types of burr. The 63mm conicals on the Zero, the 83mm conventional flats on the Duo, both the espresso pair and the brewing pair, and the 98mm very unconventional flat burrs on the EK43. The Duo has burrs similar in basic design to most flat burr grinders. The blades on these are exceptionally sharp, even the breakers. They really slice up the beans like shears, and that's a major difference from the EK, whose burrs are designed to crush, not to cut. You see the sharp edges on the flats? This rotates so that those sharp edges pass each other counterintuitively. The action is like having a circular saw rotate backward, or filing only on the return stroke, not on the cutting stroke. The blades are blunt, as intended, and yet these burrs produce splintered, irregular shards. Kind of remarkable how much they resemble the ones from the Duo, whose burrs work literally in the opposite manner. So if the design is good, shearing or crushing can deliver a high-quality grind. And of course, the Zero has 63mm conical burrs, and they do both slicing and crushing with a surprisingly short pathway compared to the others. And yet, the resulting coffee particles from all 3 look similar, although not identical. And the flavors? Assuming you're using the same coffee sample and everything is dialed in for the same times and ratios, the differences are subtle but definitely noticeable. Let me give you a hypothetical example. A pair of grinders, 1 and 2. Let's say that grinder 1 gives more emphasis to the brighter, fruitier flavors in a sample of washed beans than grinder 2. This does not mean when you taste a different sample of, say, Ethiopian naturals that are full of fruit esters, that grinder 2 is going to obscure that. You absolutely will taste it. It's just not maybe going to smack you upside the head. In fact, in this case, maybe grinder 2 makes coffee with better flavor balance. This is just another way of saying don't use a grinder to chase a flavor, because the flavor is not in the grinder, it's in the coffee. Now consider this sample. We see very little slicing or fracturing, lots of rounded shapes instead. Lots of little potatoes with relatively smooth surfaces. This sample is from a 25-euro blade grinder, and the shapes account for the flavor penalty. Everyone thinks it's because they make too many fines, but that's just someone's guess that somehow became a law of nature. You can see for yourself that there isn't a crazy load of fines. There are mostly smooth globular shapes, however, and that's the real defect here. I've even made espresso with a blade grinder. It wasn't brilliant, it was noticeably less flavorful than the baseline, but it wasn't vile. It was better than 30% of the espresso I've had outside. The link to that video should be arriving now. If you want a really inexpensive setup, a French press or a V60 or a mocha pot with a blade grinder is worth considering. If you work for a living, it's insane to buy a 600-euro grinder for a 30-euro coffee maker. Pay no attention to the fussy, nervous wrecks who will declare you a leper if you would touch coffee made with a blade grinder, much less drink it. But look, if you're buying pre-ground coffee, you're likely to get more interesting flavors and more variety out of some good quality whole beans. French press, pour over, and the mocha pot are all pretty forgiving methods that let you get away with it. An even better solution, at least for improved flavor, would be a competent manual hand grinder, although it will set you back 4 to 8 times the cost of a blade grinder. But for an added bonus, you can use a quality hand grinder for espresso and Turkish coffee and still spend 1/4 to 1/2 of what an electric prosumer unit costs. If you don't want to spend a lot and you're willing to put in a little effort, I would seriously consider a good hand grinder. So now we know what comes out of a quality prosumer coffee grinder is pretty similar to what comes out of all of them. We see nice variation in shapes and sizes, plenty of sharp angular fragments with rough textures exposing a lot of surface area. I think you can see why I often ridicule the phrase even extraction. With so much variation in the particles, it's clearly impossible. And if you could achieve it, you'd probably hate it. The coffee would be one-dimensional and monotonous. So that's about it for today. I've got what I think is an interesting demonstration planned for next time, so keep in touch. Cheers!